Ladies and gentlemen, it is noon. Thanks for being here. My name is John Launius. I am the founder of Shihan Wellness and Shihan Consultants. My full background expands government, education, technology, media, marketing, branding, and the intelligence community. When I was 9 years old, I started studying two things: martial arts and world fragrance traditions. I discovered incense in martial arts class. I burned a little bit. My mother got mad I was burning it at home. She said, "What's your interest in it?" And I said, "It fascinates me." She gave me a book on world religions. So from age 9 to 13, I studied on my own. At the age of 13, I would meet my first master of Japanese incense, who was trained from the Hata family. The Hata family is one of the oldest incense families in Japan, going back 500 years to its codified form, but extending all the way back to the advent of Buddhism in Japan at about 1,500 years ago. So what I'm going to be speaking from is generally about fragrance hypnosis and how you can integrate it however you darn well please. And if you've got questions on how to do that, I'm happy to include all that. I am informed by a very traditional background of doing this, but keep in mind that what we're going to be talking about today, I've done for the military, government, corporations, and the intelligence community. So you can apply these things across the board, because what we're dealing with ultimately is the brain and our ability to be effective in all forms of communication and how we deal with the world around us. So if you are following along, you'll notice that the first slide has lots and lots of different, what looks like herbs and woods and things like that on the slide. Those are what I call the powerhouses of incense. There's only about 25 to 35 fragrances that exist in all religions and all cultures. Understanding those will give you a great deal of freedom in the ability to control not only the spaces that you're in, but the quality of the mind that you're operating with. This will become important when you're dealing with individuals who are challenged by certain things. If someone cannot express their emotions, I know to immediately go to sandalwood. If somebody is like, "Man, I'm angry," once I know their base, their background, which is, there's a document that I'm happy to share with you that's in the slides as well, that it's called the Natural Preference Survey document. It takes 5 minutes to fill out, but once you fill that out with the questions I've asked you, then I know how to dial you in, to relax you, to calm you, to center you, so that we can actually start having a conversation instead of being filtered by what's keeping you separate from the rest of the world and your own happiness and your own connection. Next slide you'll see there is from 1994. The reason why I include this is because this is the first public lecture that I was allowed to give. Because I was trained traditionally, I was not allowed to teach for 10 years. We were making jokes in Peter Bloom's seminar yesterday where basically, we now live in the age where people go to Mexico for a weekend and come back and call themselves shamans, which is all well and good. That's fine that you do that. The difference for me and them is that I was not allowed to teach for 10 years. So when I became ready to teach, I was tested, you name it, just intense, off the charts, half the stuff you wouldn't believe anyway, until I was finally allowed to then speak in front of the room. Essentially, my teacher would say this: "John, you need to be bulletproof. You're going to be dealing with people. And so therefore, you're going to need to be able to speak to whatever comes up for people, and people are upsets waiting to happen." So when there's this expression that says the truth will set you free, but it first must piss you off. When you tell people the truth, they get pissed off, and you've got to be able to sit through that to go beyond that, so then you can finally make a positive difference with them. The next photo you'll see on the slides, if you are following along, you'll see me in traditional garb, leading an incense journey. Incense journeys are normally 2 hours in length. We did this morning here for an hour. I talked very fast, kind of like I am now, but when I'm doing a normal incense journey, my speaking is not as fast. And notice how I can shift from that very fast speaking and communication to a very slow, methodical way of speaking. This is important in your ability to shift with who you're speaking with. There are some people who prefer to speak fast when you're talking with them, and there are other people who want it slow. So therefore, your ability to shift, neuroplasticity is what I'm talking about, makes you available to whomever you are dealing with. As a Japanese Kōmoto, which the way you want to think about this is tea master for the Japanese incense ceremony. You want to think of me like a sommelier for fragrance. So we do a lot of comparison, but as a Kōmoto, we make ourselves available to all people and not reject anyone. We call it embodying the light. There's more to this quote. The next slide you'll see is the incense journey. Last year at HypnoThoughts Live, there were a number of hypnotists, some of you were in the room, who said, John, we love what you do. How can you help us grow our business? We can't afford to fly you in. Now what I do is I work with hypnotists around the country when I am presenting an incense journey in St. Louis or other places around the world. They come in on Zoom, but you work as a proxy and you change the same incense that I do. Then you invite people before and after the event. You're able to share with people your other services, whether you're a Reiki master, whether you're a massage therapist, whether you're a hypnotherapist, etc., and you grow your business. It's very, very cool. I become a little part on your calendar. You'll learn a lot about the incense, and when you're done with me, you hit end, and then I disappear. It's pretty cool. So you don't smell your life. You do not smell your life. What do I mean by that? When you walk into somebody's house, how long do you smell their house for? About 30 to 45 seconds, and then it goes away unless the smell changes. When you get back home from this trip, you're going to smell your house for the first time in a long time. You're going to go, my house looks like this? And then you're going to see those things. Because we are so good at our ability to orient ourselves and adapt, this is a good thing and a bad thing, in that if your life is not going the way you want to, and you stay with that, you'll adapt to it and not even realize that you adapted to it. So your job, in many ways, our job as hypnotists, is to take people out of the trance that they're currently in and then enter into a different trance that allows them to get what they want. And by having them be in control, by saying what they want, then you can start to make a positive difference. So when I say you don't smell your life, that is usually one of the things I will talk to clients about, especially if they're engaging with me in fragrance hypnosis. And we go a little deeper, but because of time I can't. But your clients don't either. They do not smell their life. Let me ask you this. If you were getting ready for a wedding, male or female, would you get ready without looking at a mirror? No, you would not. Mirrors are relatively new to us. I mean, we've had rudimentary mirrors for thousands of years, but I'm talking like a good polished, I can look in there and go, look at that zit, look at this, right? Getting ready for a wedding without looking in a mirror is a lot like how people live their life. Everything's fine, and then the hair's all over the place, and the pants are on backwards, and all of this, right? So somebody once said to me, they said, why do I need you as a hypnotist? I said, you don't, but you're going to move a lot faster because I'm going to be a mirror for you. And the more honest and authentic that I am with you, the more you're able to see you as you, and then be able to make the kind of transformation that you're looking for in your life. When your clients smell their life, they will be happier, healthier, and you'll be more successful by getting them there. I don't sell incense anymore, but you should. You should sell incense burners, but high quality stuff, not head shop or truck stop incense, as I sometimes call it. It's horrible, it's awful, and people don't like it. The fragrances that you're getting access to, and by the way, if about 15 minutes in, these burners are set to only burn for 15 minutes. If the light goes off, let me know, and then I'll reset it. But the more that you're able to give people something that reminds them of what you were doing, and fragrance is our most powerful sense, and I'll explain that here a little bit more in a moment, then you're going to make a connection with your clients in a way that is unique to everybody else in your particular part of the country or part of the world. So here are the 8 scientific insights. Number 1, fragrance ignites direct limbic activation. Our limbic system is our system. We have lots of systems in our body. The endocrine system, the limbic system, the RAS, yada, 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 yada. Our sense of smell is the only sense that bypasses the thalamus. The thalamus is one part of our limbic system that is our relay system. Every other sense in our body, sight, touch, etc., sound, filters. Our sense of smell is the only sense that does not filter. That is why when you walk into a building and it reminds you of 3rd grade, you might actually physically shake. When my father passed away, I cleaned his house. The last thing I did was that I cleaned out his closet. I went into the closet, there was a shirt covered in plastic. I lifted up the plastic and my father was right there again with me. This is the power of recall. I do a lot of work with the military and intelligence and other people that have to solve cognitive dissonance in what they're doing. The samurai figured this out 1,000 years ago. The samurai culture essentially is 800 years, well, we usually call it 1,000 years, but about 200 years in, the samurai started to figure out that we can't just send our samurais out into battle and have them just maim and kill and do everything else. We've got to bring them back and regulate them. They weren't using those words clearly. But things like tea ceremony, incense ceremony, flower arranging, all of the Do arts of Japan, the refinement arts, allowed these warriors to regulate. That is the reason why that I get to work with the military and not somebody walking into a room with flowing white robes saying we're going to do aromatherapy. Because we're basing it in reality, right? There's a lot to this, and I move very seamlessly between the woo-woo and the wow-wow world. And what I mean by that is that woo-woo is a veiled insult, but wow-wow is that you finally integrated it and you go, wow, that was awesome. That's pretty cool. That's what you want to do with your clients. You want them to go, wow, that was really great, thank you, because they've integrated it, and then now they're expressing themselves more than what they were before. So real quick on the limbic system. Hypothalamus, amygdala, thalamus, and hippocampus. You can remember it as a hippo wearing a hat. There you go. You can go more into that. Emotional regulation. We've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but when you are emotionally regulated, you are quite literally in the mind that you want. When you are not regulated, when you are angry, on average it takes about 20 minutes for you to get back to even somewhat semblance of being able to be in your right mind. But the chemicals that are in your body may take upwards of 24 hours to reset and re-regulate, which is the reason why I tell my martial arts students that if somebody's mad at you and they want to fight you, there is no negotiation. You either run or you fight. I advise that you run because track and field is your best martial art. People that ask me, oh, what's the best martial art? Run. I've been doing this for 43 years, and I've also, there was a movie, what was it called? Charlie Wilson's War, where what's his name goes, for 43 years, I've been in countries with people trying to kill me, people that know how. I've had that job, okay? Better to run away, because you cannot negotiate with them at all. This is true in business, this is true in negotiation, this is true in your private love lives, etc. Enhanced neuroplasticity. Your ability to shift, change, and move. Perfect. We'll just keep passing it. We'll just keep enjoying the fragrance. Neuroplasticity. Hypnosis combined with olfactory triggers can reinforce neural pathways, supporting habit formation and breaking negative pattern. Your subconscious mind remembers every sense you've ever experienced and every emotion attached to it. This is important. When I work with the military, this is a very brief story. How I get their attention is I walk into the room and I'm talking SEAL team, Delta Force. I'm talking like guys that don't like a guy like me because the general just said you're about to meet an incense master and they're expecting a dirty hippie to show up. And I'm in a three-piece suit. And what I will normally say is, gentlemen, what does cyclotrimethylene trinitramine? High explosive. Yes, sir. Good. What is trinitrotoluene? Dynamite. I said, exactly. And I said, now listen, gentlemen, I am an explosives expert. I'm also an expert in interrogation and questioning. And I said, you know that when you're in the field and you're breaching and these high explosives are literally moving through your body in a way that is disconcerting at a level you can't even put your head around. And then you're also looking at especially combat veterans or active military. They're dealing with such a chaotic and horrible world that the only way that they know how to deal with it is to either A, find themselves at the bottom of every bottle that they can get access to. They're going to create verbal, physical abuse to themselves and others, or unfortunately at the end of that line is suicide. Now, sorry to be quite blunt and really talk about this, but this is real. So what I do is I teach them how to regulate, and I frame it inside of the samurai conversation because samurai is considered the elite warriors, and they were, because they figured out how to become what's referred to as a super soldier. When you hear about the government wants to create super soldiers, that doesn't mean they want RoboCop. They want someone to be able to literally move from being a politician and diplomat when they need to, or if they need to, and do what they need to do. That's what the government wants. That's what the military wants. So apply this, though, to corporate. Apply this to anything else you're dealing with. Sometimes when people hear PTSD, they think it's reserved only for veterans. It is not. Running a business is just as traumatic as anything else, and you probably have experienced that. So keep in mind that every scent you've ever experienced is in your head, from every experience you've ever had. This is why when I'm doing the personal incense journey, which I'm doing here this weekend, I'm working with people one-on-one, and you're so close to the fragrance, and your mind stuff's coming up, because all these imprints that have been connected to fragrance, by the time that we're done and an hour and a half later, you're a lighter, you've released, some of you in the room have taken it. And it's shocking, because you're like, I feel 100 times lighter. And I said, yes, because you're no longer carrying this baggage that you had, that you don't even know that you did. Memory and recall. It will improve memory and recall. Sensors are tightly linked to memory, enabling quicker access to stored experiences. This becomes important. If somebody's dealing with trauma, well, what kind of trauma? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? These kinds of questions then tell me exactly how to start to unlock that for them. I am more than happy to go through those protocols with you in much, much, much deeper places. Anchoring mental states. Usually the barrier for this is that if I'm speaking to 1,000 or more, before I step on stage, I'll put peppermint oil in my mustache. Because peppermint oil, it brings me to the moment. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And then a whole other guy shows up, right? When I am working one-on-one, I'm not, hi, how are you? And then you're like, whoa, relax. It's connected here. So your ability to shift, anchoring emotional states, you can start to train your clients to use a particular fragrance to generate a particular way of being that generates a particular outcome. And again, please, please, please do not use anything synthetic. We are just beginning to understand the negative aspects of our synthetics. Yes, ma'am.
So, John, when you say specific scents have been shown to reduce cortisol levels, promoting relaxation and helping in hypnosis, which is the specific one?
So here's the thing. I would start with sandalwood, and the reason why is this. When terpenes aren't a part of this talk necessarily, but of the major incenses that I covered in the first slide, when you start to study terpenes control the color, taste, and smell of everything in nature. They also tell our body what to turn on and what to turn off with our immune system. When you start to see that alpha-pinene is in frankincense, sandalwood, copal, we can start to go through these. Once you know what the terpenes are in those, then you can start to dial in somebody. So if I were to take sandalwood and you're like, I don't like sandalwood. I mean, you're from India, you probably love sandalwood, right? But other people in the world may not like sandalwood. So then I'm going to go, okay, I'm looking for myrcene, alpha-pinene, a couple other terpenes based on what they're dealing with, so I'm going to pull these fragrances. And they're like, oh my gosh, that smells so good. It's like magic. It's not magic. It's a combination between science and between experience on how this changes and alters the quality of one's consciousness. Once you understand that, and it won't take very long to understand it, then you can start to use it, and that's what I want. As a Kōmoto, I want you to use these things because my job as a Kōmoto is to spread the way of incense, the way of fragrance. The word incense comes from the Latin incensum, meaning to burn through. Anything that is fragrant in our world is considered incense. When someone said, well, what's the difference between what you do and just burning incense? That's like me. Like my incense is like Wagyu steak versus like chuck steak, okay? If you take Wagyu steak and throw it directly on a flame, it might smell good for a couple of minutes, but then what happens? It burns up, then you get a burn smell, then you get like black smoke all over the place. So you're working at the proper temperature. So in sales, there are cold calls, there are warm introductions, and then if we get into an argument, we're heated. So what we need to find in everything we're doing is the proper temperature for what we're dealing with. So I'm happy to go deeper with that question, but hopefully the high level kind of look at fragrances and terpenes as you start to see the cross connect between the two opens up a door for you. Physiological response, lowering your blood pressure, lowering your breathing. Some of you who were in the incense journey this morning had that direct experience. At 7:30 in the morning, all of a sudden you're like, I was awake, but now I want to lay down now. And that's okay, because what's happening is that normally when we start to de-stress, if we're not used to like a meditation schedule or different types of self-care, our body goes, oh, we're relaxing. That means it's sleep time. And there was a woman a couple weeks ago, she was like, I'm so embarrassed I fell asleep in your talk. And I said, no, I'm glad you did because you needed the rest. She goes, I did. How did you know? I said, because you fell asleep. And she was like, oh, okay. Trauma healing. Now, this is a little loaded, but I'll use the most dramatic example. I'm currently working right now with a gentleman who's probably, been in more combat than I would care to even ever imagine. And he was referred to me by a general, and he said to me, he goes, the only reason why that I'm meeting with you is because a general told me to meet with you. He goes, I think what you do is bullshit. And I said, awesome, let's have some fun. And we're now, into our sessions, and he was like, I apologize. And I said, it's okay, don't worry about it, we know what we know and we know what we don't know. And often, I guarantee people were like, incense with power, I'm not going to that. That doesn't mean a darn thing to me. But you're getting it. I mean, did you enjoy the fragrance that's going around? Isn't that interesting, right? So, trauma healing. Fragrances connect to memory, which makes it effective in recontextualizing traumatic memories, reducing emotional charge under hypnosis. For those of you who are therapists in here, trained therapists, you were probably told at some point to keep your office as sterile as possible. I don't do that. When people walk into my office, if I know who's coming over, I know already what to do for them. And they're walking, oh my gosh, it always smells so great here. I'm like, yes, I know, because that's what I want for you, right? But sometimes I'll change the fragrance based on where they are, and they're like, oh, there's some new stuff coming up. I said, really? Tell me more about that. And then we go, and they're like, oh my gosh, I got to a whole new level. I'm like, interesting, good job. I'm like the Harry Potter of incense. Anyway. You'll notice on the slides that there is a document called the Natural Preference Survey document. If you would like that, you may have it. My only request is that you leave my logo on it. Add your logo to it if you so desire. But in the world of sharing and transparency, anything that I've ever gotten from any of you, I incorporate that. I got this from Peter Bloom. I got this from Sandra Grace. I got this. This is how you build community. So we've had that experience before, where people take from us and they don't acknowledge it. So I just invite you to think about community and what that means, okay? Case studies, I won't read through that, but I'll leave you with this before we get into questions. So in 2014, I posted something on Facebook that it comes up every once in a while, and I just want to leave this with you before we do Q&A. My first teacher of Kōdō, the Japanese way of incense, passed away 20 years ago this year. Her life was fragrant, and her contributions were many. Days before her passing, the fire was transferred, and her fragrance continued. Today, I'm remembering her greatest lesson. Always make your contributions like a normal conversation. Hide your sources that will illuminate others by using language that speaks only to them. Never preach, appear ordinary. True teaching only happens when the seeker or the student truly asks. Never forget this. I have not. Be radiant, my friends. So, fragrance is the soul's first language. It says what the mouth cannot and hears what the heart has forgotten. We have 6 minutes for questions. Yes?
So what would be the best way to message?
Either the Huva app for now, and remember it ends about, I think, a month after the conference, and then just get my contact information out there and then send me a note. In the back?
So have you incorporated that in corporations, like on business level?
Absolutely. So I just did a 7-hour journey for the Tugboat Institute. Some of you may know what that is. The CEO that I work with, I told him I said, listen, I'll stay as long as you want. They're normally 2 hours in length, and he said, I'm going to hold you to that. I was there for 7 hours. 7 hours. These men and women who are running billion-dollar businesses were like, how come I've never heard of this? And I said, because you've been running your billion-dollar business. And they're like, the cognitive dissonance in their mind was so amazing. And they're like, and then privately they're like, here's my card. I'd be interested in hypnosis. Don't tell anybody. They see what is there. They see what's possible. But there's still that stigma of hypnosis, and I'm happy that it's there.
So would they include scents every day in the office?
There are some companies that do that, right? In the same way that we have seen Apple and Google and other companies, reimburse employees for hypnosis, there are some companies that are beginning to use aromatherapy. Remember, what I do is the most effective form of aromatherapy, and that is not just marketing and advertising. Very briefly, how I explain this is that if you're an aromatherapist, awesome. But if you only use essential oils, hydrosols, and absolutes, you are not dealing with the full spectrum of the chemicals. I deal with the full spectrum of the chemicals, so it's the difference between an MP3 and a WAV file. An MP3 is not a very deep file of information, where a WAV file is. And so In incorporation, I might be working with C-suite level executives to incorporate it. Depending on the job, there are some jobs where I don't want people so relaxed that they're at work going, I don't care about that email. We need people to be there, but you want that juxtaposition between the high stress and the deep calm. And when you have the two together, that's the integration. That becomes the peak performance.
And that works universal across all cultures?
Absolutely, because we're dealing with the human brain. Unless there's something like literally physically wrong, it will all work the same. Now, you'll all have a little bit of a different perception, and that's outside the scope of what we're talking about, but it works for everybody. The one incense that I use, called Kiara, that is the pinnacle of the personal incense journey, creates the mental clarity of a 30-minute meditation in a single inhalation. Single inhalation. And people are like, come on, that sounds like marketing. I'm like, oh no, it works powerfully. Heal.
What do you do with people who've lost their sense of smell?
So anosmia is what we're talking about. It is not uncommon as people age that they lose their sense of smell or lose aspects of it. A lot of people after COVID, viruses, things like that. You will still get the value and benefit of the chemicals. There was a hypnotist that I worked with this weekend, one of the first personal incense journeys I gave. She's like, look, I don't know how to smell, but I heard about this and I want to do it. I said, great. And by the end, she was like, I smelled some stuff, but I'm in a state of complete bliss. And I'm like, yeah, congratulations, welcome, because the chemicals work the same. Go ahead.
So companies like Aroma 360 that market for hotels and hospitality businesses, is that all synthetic?
Yes.
Is that worse than no scent?
Yes, in my opinion it is. So here's the thing, that Scent 360, this comes out of a study from the 1980s where the Japanese figured out that if we pump lemon through our office buildings, people will be more effective. What that is that's limonene, that's a terpene that excites, right? Every hotel on the Strip has its own signature fragrance. And the reason why it does is because you walk in and you check in, oh, Caesar smells good. And you check in and then you don't smell it anymore. And then you go back home and then you come across something that smells like Caesar's and you're like, oh, Caesar's, I love that. We should go back to Vegas. And that's the power of it. That's what I'm saying for all of you. Anchor them through fragrance, sell them the things that will be like, I love John Launius, my hypnotist. I feel so good, and I also smell good at the same time. That's what I'm asking you to do. Okay, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pull. I'm not going to look, so you all don't think. All right, I've got one. Thank you again. I appreciate that. Thank you. Is Kevin Moran here? There you go. The finest sandalwood on the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. If you enjoy this, tell them to give me more time next year. Thank you.